So,
Can't hear you back here for a sergeant there. Just kidding.
All right, Eddie. All right. So hey, welcome out. Thanks for coming today. As you know, we're here to kind of talk a little bit about and oppose what the Austin Police Chief Art Acevedo has been saying about open carry, open carriers, gun owners, facts, whatever those things have said. And I want to share a few things. I went and I did, actually I've got a running file on Chief Acevedo, just like I did on Chief McManus in San Antonio. But this is a picture of Art Acevedo. This is in 2011. This was when the Occupy Austin group was at the downtown Austin at the City Hall. And this guy that he's talking to isn't one of the protesters. This is an undercover APD officer. Art Acevedo was actually infiltrating this peaceful Occupy Austin group, and whether you agree with them or not, it was a peaceful protest, and yet Art Acevedo is incorporating undercover agents into the Occupy Austin people. Now, who here is the APD officer for OCT? Come on, speak up. All right. I mean, that to me is egregious. This police chief here should not be getting involved in First Amendment issues.
Aye, aye.
And this chief has a history of that. One of the things that there was an issue here of, you might remember a jogger who had crossed the street and she was running, and I guess she was jaywalking or whatever, and one of the officers tackled her, and she was screaming because she was listening to music, so she didn't hear the officer. This is what Art Acevedo had to say. Whether or not he grabbed her from behind, it's not relevant. At some point, she knows it's a cop. The cop asked her a lawful question that she's lawfully required to answer, and she didn't. Acevedo says the woman was arrested for failure to identify, not resisting arrest. Then he goes on to say that's not what's egregious. He says, in other cities, cops are actually committing sexual assaults on duty. I thank God this is what passes for a controversy here. So he's justifying the actions of his police officers because it's worse in other places.
But it's okay for two cops on their dash cam video to actually talk about a woman crossing the street. Well, you can't get unraped.
Right.
That's perfectly okay, though.
Exactly, and I'm going to get to that. In November of last year, after the elections, obviously open carry Texas was a big political issue in both House races, Senate races, and the governor's race.
Yeah.
Art Acevedo said, we don't need to go back to the wild, wild west. He suggested open carry would needlessly undercut a program well as intended, talking about the CHL process. By surrendering the element of uncertainty and surprise, Acevedo warns that those who open carry, as opposed to conceal, would be the first targeted by criminals in an active situation. He then says, we've done a great job of keeping firearms only in the hands of law-abiding citizens of sound mind. Now I would ask Art Acevedo, look at this wall. Look at these windows that have been shot out by a criminal thug, by an extremist. There are pockets in the concrete, bullet holes all over the place. Really, Art? Are we keeping guns out of the hands of criminals? Is keeping me from having an openly carried pistol gonna prevent that in the future?
No, never.
He says we surrender the element of surprise. When you're involved, and I really hope Art's listening, when you're involved in a criminal activity, a guy breaks into a restaurant, breaks into a bank, breaks into a gas station, breaks into your house, by the time you respond, because you want that element of surprise, the crime is already in progress. By open carrying, you prevent that crime being in progress to begin with, because the criminal doesn't want to put his life on the line.
That's right.
Criminals are cowards.
Moving forward, this was back in January, I believe. No, this is still in November, late November. Acevedo says he's still advocating for universal background checks on gun owners and stricter laws. He said having a gun does not make you commit a crime. Wanting to commit a crime leads to you acquiring a gun to commit that crime.
What?
So if having a gun does not make you commit a crime, and I'm going to get to this in some of the earlier things that he said, then why is he trying to prevent us from having them?
Does having
legally?
a gun make me want a highway race?
Exactly. All right, fast forward to December of last year. This was right after this shooting here. So does anybody not remember the shooting when it happened here?
I don't.
The guy, here's what happened. The guy pulled up right where this white van is. Got out of the car, he had an AR-15 and an AK-47 variant. Just started shooting up this place. I mean, you can see all the holes, all the bullet holes in the glass, all the bullet holes in the walls and the ceiling.
Shame.
With his AR-15, his AK-47. A gentleman, one of the officers right here where this parking garage comes out on a mounted horse, was able to take him out before he was able to do any damage and hurt people. It was only like 2:30 in the morning, so thankfully nobody was hurt except for the shooter. But he says, this is what drives me nuts, and this should scare every single person, not only in the city of Austin, but in this entire country, because Chief Acevedo is not an Austin native. He comes from California. He left the LAPD under very controversial circumstances in which he was having a relationship with a fellow California Highway Patrol officer as a vice chief, and then he had naked pictures of this, allegedly, because it was settled, so we don't know for sure. He never went to trial because it was a settled case. Allegedly shared these naked pictures of this woman, ended up having to leave the CHP, and guess where he came? Austin. Thank you, Austin. But he says, he says Americans need to know our neighbors, know our families, tell somebody. Here's what you should get chills on. If you know somebody that's acting with a lot of hatred towards any particular group, especially if it's somebody you know is a gun enthusiast, you need to tell somebody.
Oh my God.
Okay, Art Acevedo carries a gun and he acts with hatred towards us.
Yes, and it gets worse.
So we need to tell somebody.
He says it doesn't mean we're going to take him to jail. We just need to vet these people. Vet these nuts.
Yeah, we should take Art to the vet.
January 28th, our good friends here at Channel 7 reported that a complaint is being filed and is currently undergoing against Chief for violating ethics rules. This is because he failed to report personal financial issues like he's supposed to. This is still ongoing, so it's just an alleged thing. But Art Acevedo wants you to obey the laws, wants you to have to jump through hoops to be able to exercise your rights, but he doesn't want to be held accountable for his own actions. Now he's angry. You feel that wind? The wrath of Acevedo. February 13th. Talking about open carry. Now we're finally getting into the hearings. Open carry is moving through the House and Senate. He says now we're going to create an environment where people are lawfully allowed to carry firearms on campus. We're potentially turning sexual assault victims, who we have a lot of resources to help these young people through victim services and so forth, into potential murder victims. Art Acevedo says, basically, that, you know what, you don't need a firearm to prevent a rape. We've got programs after your rape. It's going to be okay. Just go and get help. But you don't need a firearm to prevent that rape.
Let's have him raped and see how he feels.
And of course he says 2 days later, don't let others twist my words. What I just told you was a quote. That's pretty much what he said. We've got programs for people who get raped on campus. All right. Move forward to March. There's nothing to fix. Some of the folks that want open carry and constitutional carry, it's because they're not of the character or the mindset to get a concealed handgun license. What he basically called each and every one of you are mental idiots. You are not capable of handling a handgun, but apparently you can have these rifles. Because you don't, is there anybody here that simply just doesn't want to get a license?
I will not submit.
I will never do
I have one, but I don't want to. I travel a lot because my daughter's in college in another state, which is a foreign country. So I have one so I can carry with me in other places. But I don't want to ask for permission. It doesn't mean that if I don't get a license that I'm a criminal. There are only 827,000 concealed handgun licenses in Texas. There are 27 million of us. Are 97% of Texans criminals, and that's why they don't have concealed handgun licenses? Because that's what Art just said. That's what he just said.
How many of those are police officers?
Yeah, well, they don't have to get a concealed handgun license, so hardly any law enforcement have concealed handgun license because they're not required to have them. All right. Now, I love this quote. I say this one too because in that same hearing, Sheriff Louderback, who is a staunch advocate of your rights, said, if it's the will of the people speak, if the will of the people speak and they want elective open carry in this state, then it's law enforcement that's going to have to change, modify their position, create the tactics and policy to handle that correctly. And he is absolutely right. Law enforcement's job is not to restrict your rights, it's to enforce the law. And if the law changes, they need to change. Now, I want to say something about APD. APD is one of the model police departments that Open Carry Texas has to deal with, okay? As it relates to open carry, we have had zero issues with Austin Police Department. They have always been extremely professional. They've been extremely courteous. As a matter of fact, before everybody got here, we had a great conversation talking about firearms. They invited us to the Austin Police Marksmanship Program. I mean, we had a great conversation there was about 6 of them out here. They weren't confrontational at all. They were shaking our hands, talking about guns, admiring what we've got. APD is a great law enforcement department. It's their chief that we have issues with. Now, the last thing, and then I want to get to where all this comes from. Talking about that amendment that was added in the House. There's an amendment that was added in the House that will prohibit law enforcement from going to somebody who's lawfully open carrying a handgun and just walking up to them and saying, "Let me see your papers, please." That amendment was adopted in the House, and it's going to be debated in the Senate, and it's expected to pass. What Art Acevedo has said is that what we've done is we put open carry in a position where law enforcement can't even ask whether they're drug cartel members or that are a part of Mexico, or gang members, or anybody that wants to walk around with guns. And there's not a darn thing law enforcement can do about it. And I say great.
Damn straight.
Because I don't see law enforcement coming out here demanding to see that I can lawfully carry these rifles. So what's so different about a handgun? And Art, let me tell you something. Whether this amendment gets passed or not, you don't have the right to stop me and ask me if I can carry this handgun anyway. All this amendment does is puts it into law what the Constitution and the courts have already said about our Fourth Amendment right to be secure in our persons and effects. If you don't have probable cause, Art, you have no right to stop me. Now, the last thing. So Art said a lot of things over the last, since Open Carry Texas has been founded. He said a lot of great things. Why does he do that? This is the About Us page of every town for gun safety. You guys know that's Michael Bloomberg's organization. And I want to tell you, read a few names off of the advisory board. The first name, Art Acevedo. So there's a reason that this police chief is so against your right to keep and bear arms. He's invested in it. Art Acevedo, in his little settlement with the police department in California, got a nice little $900,000 check that he is now using in Texas to fight against your rights. And of course, the next name is Michael Bloomberg, Warren Buffett, Anise Parker. David, do you know who Anise Parker is?
Yeah, I've heard of her once or twice.
She's on the advisory board.
Oh, really? You mean the payroll?
And of course, Shannon Watts. So, if you want to know where his ideas come from and why he opposes guns, it's not about officer safety. It's not about your safety. It's not about these great workers walking by. It's not about their safety. It's about Art Acevedo being invested in taking away your right to keep and bear arms. Now, I've said all that. We have no proof that when we get open carry, it's going to be hunky-dory and we're not going to have any problems. However, we brought somebody today, and I want